Should I help the family that abandoned me? World's biggest disappointment. That's not what the mug said, but it's what my father called me the day he threw me out of our house. Actually, he didn't call me anything. He punched me in the jaw, told me I was no son of his, and literally threw my belongings onto the front lawn while 20 family members watched. My crime? According to my adopted sister Lily, I had been assaulting her for years. Every word was a lie. Before I tell you what happened when they came crawling back 7 years later, you need to understand who I was before my life imploded. I grew up in a picture-perfect family in the Chicago suburbs. Upper middle class, nice neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and appearances mattered more than anything. My dad worked as a financial advisor downtown, pulling in serious money. My mom did part-time real estate, but mostly focused on maintaining our family's image, community groups, charity events, making sure we looked flawless in every Christmas card. I was their biological son, and honestly, I had it pretty easy. Straight A's came naturally to me. I was good at baseball, good at talking to adults, good at being the golden child. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't perfect. I snuck beer with friends, threw parties when my parents were gone, did typical teenage stuff. But nothing that would shatter the careful image my mother cultivated. When I was 10, they adopted Lily. She was 3 years old, this tiny kid with huge brown eyes who instantly became the center of everyone's universe. I'll be honest, I was addicted to her at first. Classic jealous older brother stuff. Suddenly everything was about Lily's first day of preschool, Lily's dance recital, Lily's adorable new dress. I went from being the star to being the supporting actor in my own family. But we figured it out eventually. As we got older, I thought we had a normal sibling relationship. We fought sometimes, but I looked out for her. When some kid in second grade kept pulling her hair and pushing her around on the playground, I was in ninth grade. I walked her to elementary school one morning and had a very clear conversation with that little punk. Nobody messed with her after that. I taught her how to throw a proper punch, how to stand up for herself. I was her big brother. That's what big brothers do. By my senior year of college, life was exactly where I wanted it to be. I was captain of our Division II baseball team with legitimate minor league potential. I had a 3.85 GPA in business administration with a finance minor. My friends were solid, the kind of guys who'd help you move or pick you up at 3 in the morning if your car broke down. I've been lifting seriously since high school, and by college I was in the best shape of my life. Benching 315 for reps, squatting 405, deadlifting 495. I had that V-taper everyone wants, broad shoulders, narrow waist, visible abs year-round. I'm not bragging. I'm just painting a picture of where I was. I had dated a few girls seriously over the years, but nothing stuck. Honestly, I was focused on my future. My dad had connections at several investment firms around Chicago, and after graduation, I was set to start a management training program at one of the biggest. The plan was simple: graduate, maybe play baseball for a few more years if the opportunity came up, then build a career in finance. Eventually meet the right girl, get married, have kids, live the American dream. That was the plan. Lily was 15 by then, a sophomore in high school. She turned into this dramatic theater kid who was always in school plays and overreacted to everything. Typical teenager stuff. She had her own life, her own friends. When I came home from college on breaks, we'd eat dinner together, catch up on normal brother-sister stuff. At least, that's what I thought we were doing. Looking back, there were signs I missed. The way her face would tighten when my parents bragged about my baseball stats. Her little comments about how easy I had it. Her tendency to tell elaborate stories about things that happened at school that couldn't possibly be true. But hindsight is 2020, right? It was a Tuesday in October during my senior year. I just finished a brutal practice where coach had worked us into the ground after we'd lost a weekend series to our conference rivals. My legs felt like jelly, my shoulder ached from too many bullpen sessions, but it was that good kind of pain. The kind that says you push your body to its limits, and it responded. I showered, threw on jeans and a hoodie, and checked my phone on the way to my truck, the F-150 my parents had helped me buy for my 20th birthday. 37 missed calls, 54 texts, messages from family members, friends, everyone. You sick fuck. How could you? You're dead to me. My heart started pounding. My first thought was that someone had died. Grandma or grandpa, maybe. I called my dad immediately. What the hell is going on? I asked. When he answered, his voice was ice cold in a way I'd never heard before. Get your ass home now. Don't you dare go anywhere else. Then he hung up. I sat in the parking lot staring at my phone, trying to figure out what was happening. I called my mom. No answer. I called my best friend from high school who still lived near my parents. No answer. It was like everyone had collectively decided I was radioactive. I drove the 20 minutes home in a fog, my stomach in knots the entire way. NPR was playing on the radio, but I couldn't process a single word they were saying. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw my Uncle Mike's car and several others. Uncle Mike was my dad's younger brother, a construction contractor with a temper who'd never really warmed up to me. Before I could even get out of my truck, Uncle Mike came charging at me from the front porch. He yanked open my door, grabbed my shirt, and slammed me against the side of the truck. "I'm gonna fucking kill you," he screamed, inches from my face. His spit hit my cheek. I could smell alcohol on his breath. His eyes were wild, completely unhinged. I could have broken free easily. Mike was 50 and out of shape, and I was a 22-year-old athlete in my prime. But I was too shocked to react. My dad and my other uncle Steve pulled him off me. "Inside." "Now," my dad said without looking me in the eye. I walked up the front steps and into the living room. It was packed. My mom sitting on the couch, eyes red and puffy from crying. Both sets of grandparents looking grim. Aunts, uncles, close family friends. And Lily, my little sister, curled up against my grandma, sobbing into her shoulder. When I walked in, the room went completely silent. Everyone stared at me with a mixture of horror and disgust that made my blood run cold. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, looking around for any clue about what was happening. My mom looked up, her face twisted with rage and hatred I'd never seen before. "How could you? Your own sister? What are you talking about?" My dad stepped forward, his usual calm demeanor as a financial consultant completely gone. He looked like he wanted to rip me apart with his bare hands. "Lily told us everything. How you've been coming into her room at night for years." The accusation hit me like a freight train. I literally couldn't breathe. The room started spinning. "What? That's insane. I never touched her." Lily was crying harder now. "You said nobody would believe me. You said you'd hurt me if I told. You said it was our secret." That's... I was screaming now, my shock giving way to rage. "I never said that. I've never done anything to her. What the hell is going on?" Uncle Mike lunged at me again, but was held back by my dad and Uncle Steve. "My buddy's a cop. You're going to prison, you piece of shit. They're going to love you there." I tried to defend myself, try to make them see how crazy this was, but it was like talking to a brick wall. Nobody was listening. Lily kept adding more details, making up things that never happened. She said I first touched her when she was 10, and I was home from high school for Christmas break. She said it had happened dozens of times since then. She said I threatened to hurt mom and dad if she ever told anyone. Everything she said was a lie, but they were all nodding, comforting her, glaring at me with pure hatred. It felt surreal, like I'd slipped into an alternate reality where everything was backwards. Then my dad snapped. He'd always been controlled, never violent. But something broke in him. He stepped right up to me and threw a right hook that would make a heavyweight boxer proud. Caught me square on the jaw, and I went down, tasting blood where my teeth had cut into my cheek. "Get your shit and get out. You're no son of mine," he yelled, standing over me, flexing his hand. My mom had already packed some of my clothes into trash bags. They were sitting by the door. My dad grabbed my wallet and pulled out all the cards with his name on them, credit cards, health insurance card, everything. "Dad, please. This isn't true," I begged, blood dripping from my split lip. "You've known me my whole life. You know I would never do something like this." He grabbed my shirt, hauled me to the door, and literally threw me down the front steps. I landed hard on my shoulder and felt something crack. Turned out to be a minor separation. The bags of clothes followed. Then my baseball gear. "If you ever come near this family again, I'll kill you myself," he said before slamming the door. I sat on the front lawn, blood on my face, shoulders screaming in pain, neighbors peeking through windows at the commotion. My entire life had just collapsed in less than an hour. That night, I sat in my truck in the baseball field parking lot, trying to comprehend what had happened. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene, trying to figure out how Lily could do this, how my parents could believe her without even questioning it. By morning, my jaw was swollen and purple. My shoulder hurt so badly I could barely move my arm. I called a teammate, Ryan, and he let me crash on his couch for a week. His roommates weren't thrilled about it, but they tolerated me. I tried calling, texting, emailing everyone in my family. grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, people I'd known my entire life. No responses except one text from my dad. Contact us again and I'll file a restraining order. You're dead to us. Ryan tried to help. Dude, you need to go to the police. File a report about your dad hitting you. Get ahead of this thing. But I couldn't. Some part of me refused to accept that this was really happening. I kept expecting my parents to come to their senses, to realize how absurd this was. And honestly, I was terrified. What if Lily didn't back down? What if they believed her over me? How do you prove a negative, that you didn't do something? 2 weeks later, I got an email from the university. My tuition payment for the semester had bounced. My parents had canceled it mid-semester. I went to the financial aid office, tried to get an emergency loan. But without a cosigner and with virtually no credit history, I was screwed. I had to drop most of my classes, go part-time, so I could work full-time to afford even that. Coach was understanding at first. Let me stay on the team, but I missed so many practices because of my new job as security at a bar that I barely played. My grades tanked. Went from dean's list to barely passing. Friends started avoiding me. Rumors were spreading. Someone in my family had told someone who told someone else. You know how it goes. Nobody called me a predator to my face, but I noticed how people looked at me. How conversations stopped when I walked into rooms. How girls would move away if I sat next to them in class. For months later, my truck broke down. The engine block cracked. Thousands to repair. I couldn't afford it. I lost my delivery job, which I'd picked up on top of the bar security gig. I got evicted from the shitty apartment I'd been sharing with 2 other guys because I couldn't make rent. I started sleeping in the baseball team's equipment shed after Coach gave me the code. Showering in the locker room. Eating 1 meal a day at the cafeteria with what was left of my meal plan. Coach found me there one night in February. It was below zero outside, and I was wearing 3 hoodies huddled in a sleeping bag, using my duffel bag as a pillow. Instead of getting angry, he sat down on the floor next to me. "Son, what the hell happened to you?" he asked. His voice genuinely concerned. I told him everything. The accusation, my parents' reaction, getting cut off, losing my truck, the apartment, everything. He was the first person who actually listened to the whole story. When I finished, he didn't accuse me of lying. He didn't say he believed me either. He just nodded and sat quietly for a moment. "You can stay here through the end of the semester. After that, I'll help you figure something out." The next day, he brought me a space heater and a decent air mattress. He started inviting me to dinner at his house once a week. His wife always packed leftovers for me to take. It wasn't much, but it was something. It meant someone cared. I finished the year with a 2.1 GPA, barely avoided academic probation. But I was done with baseball. The fire was gone. Coach set me up with a summer job at a wilderness program for troubled kids in Colorado. Ironic, right? But it paid cash, provided housing and a staff cabin, kept me fed. That fall, I didn't go back to school. Stayed at the wilderness program, became a full-time guide. Spent my days hiking mountains, teaching survival skills to rich kids whose parents didn't know what else to do with them. I rebuilt myself physically, carrying 50-pound packs up mountains, chopping wood, building shelters. It was brutal work. I gained 15 pounds of pure muscle in 6 months. At night, I'd get blackout drunk with the other guides. On days off, I experimented with whatever I could get my hands on. Weed, acid, mushrooms, coke. I wasn't careful. I didn't care. I was trying to numb myself to the reality that my old life was gone forever. After a guide died in a climbing accident that could have been prevented if I hadn't been nursing a hangover, the program director pulled me aside. "Jake, you're one of our best guides when you're on. The kids respect you. You're solid in the field. But you're a liability when you're like this. I can't have you responsible for kids' lives when you're self-destructing." I got fired the next day. I spent the next year living in my beater car, a 1998 Honda Civic I'd bought for $1,200 cash. I worked whatever jobs I could find. Bar bouncer, event security, day labor, construction, any job where I could use my size and nobody asked too many questions about my past. I avoided women entirely. Avoided families. I would literally walk out of a restaurant if a kid sat too close to my table. The fear of being accused again was paralyzing. I had nightmares about being in prison, other inmates finding out what I was supposedly there for. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding so hard I thought I was having a heart attack. One night, I was working security at a college bar in Fort Collins. I recognized a guy from my old university who'd played football while I was there. He recognized me too. He started telling his friends who I was, what I'd been accused of doing. By closing time, they were all staring at me, making comments loud enough for me to hear. Predator. Sick fuck. Someone should teach him a lesson. I tried to ignore it. I did my job. At 2 in the morning, I walked the last patrons out and headed to my car. That's when they jumped me in the parking lot. 3 guys from earlier. They'd been waiting. They called me a pedophile, a predator. Said they'd make sure I couldn't hurt anyone else. I fought back, landed some solid punches. Definitely broke one guy's nose. But it was 3-on-1 and they had surprise on their side. I ended up with 3 broken ribs, a fractured eye socket, a dislocated shoulder, and a concussion. The guy with the broken nose must have panicked because they took off when a car pulled into the lot. The driver called an ambulance. I spent 2 nights in a hospital. Got released with nowhere to go, no health insurance, and a $17,000 medical bill I couldn't pay. The painkillers they gave me barely touched the pain. I couldn't work because of my injuries. I slept in my car in Walmart parking lots, taking sponge baths in gas station bathrooms when I could lift my arms enough. I decided I was done. Just done. It was raining, middle of the night. I drove to an old bridge outside town that was high enough. Parked my Civic, walked to the middle, climbed over the railing. My ribs screamed with every movement. I don't know how long I stood there, rain soaking me, staring down at the black water below. I had my phone in my hand. No texts, no calls. 3 years of complete silence from my family. Nobody was coming to save me. Nobody cared if I lived or died. Bit cold for a swim, don't you think? The voice startled me so badly, I almost slipped. I gripped the railing with my good arm, pain shooting through my broken ribs. Turned to see an old man, maybe 70, standing there in a raincoat, holding a fishing rod. Go away, I said, my voice shaking. Can't do that, son, he said calmly, like we were having a casual conversation on a sunny day. See, if I go away and you jump, that makes me complicit in a way. Couldn't live with that. It's not your problem. It became my problem the moment I saw you. That's how life works. He moved closer, not threatening, just steady. My name's Frank, retired Marine. Seen plenty of men at their breaking point. You want to tell me what's got you standing on the wrong side of that railing? You wouldn't understand. Try me. I'm not sure why I told him. Maybe because I figured I'd be dead soon anyway. Maybe because he was a stranger who didn't immediately treat me like a monster. Maybe because something in his eyes reminded me of my grandfather, the only person in my family who might have believed me if he hadn't been deep in dementia by then. When I finished, he just nodded, like my old coach had. Then he said something I'll never forget. Son, you've been carrying this alone long enough. Put the weight down for one night. Come have a hot meal, dry clothes, and we'll talk about tomorrow with clear heads. Why would you help someone like me? You don't know if I'm telling the truth. Frank's eyes were sharp despite the darkness. Been reading people's faces for 50 years. In combat and in peace. You're either telling the truth or you're the best damn liar I've ever met. Either way, death is permanent. Food isn't. I could have ignored him. Could have jumped anyway. Sometimes I wonder why I didn't. But something about his certainty, his calm in the face of my storm, made me climb back over that rail. Frank's house was small but immaculate. Everything had military precision. Books lined up perfectly on shelves. Shoes parallel by the door. He gave me dry clothes that had belonged to his son who'd been killed in Afghanistan 10 years earlier. Made me take a hot shower while he cooked. That night, I slept on Frank's couch. I actually slept for the first time in what felt like years. The next morning, he made me breakfast. Eggs, bacon, coffee, so strong it could wake the dead. Then he offered me a job. He said he owned a small security company. Executive protection, event security, specialized services for high-end clients. Said he needed a young, strong guy who could follow orders and keep his mouth shut. Why would you trust me with something like that? I asked. You just met me. I was about to kill myself. Frank looked me dead in the eyes. Because a man pushed to the edge who chooses to step back has something worth living for, even if he doesn't know it yet. And because if you screw me over, I know exactly how to find you. For the next 6 months, I lived in Frank's guest room, worked for his company. He was a hard ass. 5 a.m. workouts, strict rules, no alcohol on work nights. Made me go to the doctor for my injuries. Paid the bills himself. Said I'd pay him back once I got on my feet. But he was fair. Paid me well. Taught me about finance, investing, how to dress, how to interact with clients, how to be professional again. He also insisted I see a therapist an old Vietnam vet buddy of his who specialized in PTSD. I resisted at first, but Frank wouldn't take no for an answer. You got your bell rung, son. Not just physically. Need to get your head straight if you're going to work for me. The therapy helped. Slowly taught me that what happened wasn't my fault, that I didn't deserve it, that I wasn't permanently broken. After 6 months, I'd save enough to get my own place. A tiny apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Clean and safe. I started taking business management courses at community college, some specialized security certifications. Frank started to feel like the father I'd lost. He never pushed me to contact my family, never suggested I try to clear my name. He just said, some battles aren't worth fighting. Focus on the war. Build a life they can't take away from you. A year into working for Frank, he assigned me to handle security for his niece's art gallery opening. Said it was a favor for his sister, but I realized now he was playing matchmaker. Sophie wasn't what I expected. Frank had described her as smart as a whip and doesn't take shit from anyone, which was accurate but incomplete. She was beautiful in an unconventional way. Tall and athletic with striking green eyes that seemed to see right through you. Dark hair cut in an asymmetrical style that framed her face perfectly. Not conventionally pretty like a magazine cover, but stunning in the way she commanded attention just by being present. We didn't hit it off immediately. She assumed I was just another muscle-bound security guard with no brain. I assumed she was a stuck-up art snob. During the event, I overheard her explaining an abstract painting to a potential buyer, then rolling her eyes when they walked away without purchasing. Not everyone gets it, I said, not meaning to start conversation. She looked me up and down, taking in my security suit. And you do? Not really. But I'm not pretending to either. She almost smiled. Honesty. Refreshing. Throughout the night, I noticed her watching me. Not in a make sure the security guy isn't stealing way, but with genuine interest. I was doing my job, scanning the room, checking doors, keeping an eye on the more expensive pieces. Professional. Alert. Unobtrusive. She approached me at the end of the night as the last guests were leaving and I was wrapping up. So Uncle Frank says you're more than just muscle. Your uncle talks too much, I replied. She laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Not the fake social chuckle I'd heard all evening. Actually, he barely talks at all, which is why when he does, people listen. He says you're going to school. Business management. Yeah, plus some specialized security certifications. Interesting combination. Tell me about it. We talked until 2 in the morning. About almost everything except my past. She was smart, funny, challenging in all the right ways. She traveled extensively, had strong opinions on art, politics, music, but also listened when I shared my perspectives. When I finally said I had to leave because I had an early training session with a new client, she handed me her card. I've got a security issue in my condo. Locks need upgrading. Maybe you could give me a consultation. It was an obvious excuse, but I took it anyway. That consultation turned into dinner, then movie nights, then weekends together. Sophie was different from anyone I'd ever dated. Fiercely independent, passionate about her work, but vulnerable in quiet moments. She'd been hurt before, though not in the same way I had. Pain recognizes pain. For months, I avoided talking about my family. When she asked, I gave vague stories. Said my parents had died in a car accident, that I was an only child. Sophie sensed I was hiding something, but she didn't push. Frank finally insisted I come clean. That girl is falling for you, he said one day at work as we were setting up security for an upcoming event. And you're falling for her. She deserves the truth before this goes any further. He was right. So one night over dinner in my apartment, I told her everything. The whole terrible story. I expected her to leave, to look at me differently, to wonder if maybe Lily hadn't been lying. Instead, she held my hand across the table and said, "Thank you for trusting me. I believe you." Besides Frank, nobody else had said those 3 words to me. I broke down right there at the dinner table. Cried like a child. She just held me and let me get it all out. 2 years after we met, I proposed. Did it right. Down on one knee in the same spot where we'd had our first real date. Ring in hand, heart racing. Frank walked her down the aisle since her own father had passed years before. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Started building a real life. I finished my degree. Became a partner in Frank's firm. We expanded from local security to regional and eventually national contracts. Built a reputation for professionalism and discretion. Sophie's art career took off. Her work started appearing in major galleries, fetching serious prices. We talked about starting a family. I was finally happy, finally at peace. The nightmares came less frequently. I could be around children without panicking. I even reconnected with a couple old college friends who'd reached out after hearing fragments of the real story through mutual acquaintances. My old life felt distant, like it had happened to someone else. I still thought about my family sometimes. Wondered if they'd ever doubted Lily's story, if they ever regretted what they did. But I'd accepted that chapter as closed. I had new family now, people who chose me, who stood by me. That was enough, or so I thought. It was a random Tuesday in March. I was in my office reviewing security protocols for an upcoming client event, a billionaire tech CEO visiting for a conference who needed discreet protection. My assistant buzzed me on the intercom. "Sir, you have a call on line 1. Woman wouldn't give her name, but says it's a family emergency." My first thought was Sophie or Frank. Put her through. I picked up the receiver. "Hello, this is Jake." Silence. Then a sob. "Jake, it's mom." My body went cold. I hadn't heard her voice in 7 years. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just said, "What do you want?" "Please don't hang up," she begged. "We need to talk to you. It's important. We haven't spoken in 7 years. Nothing could be that important." Lily confessed. She lied about everything. She made it all up. The world stopped. 7 years of suffering, of rebuilding, of starting over, of nightmares, panic attacks, therapy, all because of a lie. I knew it was a lie, but hearing her admit it, "Jake, are you there?" I hung up. I walked out of my office, told my assistant to cancel my meetings, drove to Frank's house. When I told him, he just nodded and said, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do. You just don't know if it's the right thing." He was right. Part of me wanted to ignore them, block them from my life permanently. Another part needed answers, needed to hear the truth spoken to my face. Sophie said the same thing when I told her that night. "You need closure," she said. "But whatever you decide, I'm with you. And Jake, this doesn't change anything between us. I'm still here, no matter what." For 2 weeks, I ignored the calls and texts that started flooding in from my mom, my dad, even relatives who'd cut me off years ago. I talked it through with my therapist. Yes, I still have one. Not ashamed to admit it. Finally, I knew I had to face them, but on my terms. I texted my mother, coffee shop on Main Street. "Sunday, 2 p.m. Just you, Dad, and Lily. I'll have people with me. One chance only." Sunday came. Frank insisted on coming as backup. Sophie sat beside me, holding my hand so tightly it almost hurt. We arrived early. I took a table in the corner where I could see all the entrances and exits. Old security habits never die. My stomach was in knots. Part of me still expected them not to show, or that this was some elaborate trick. Sophie kept checking on me. "We can leave any time, okay? Just say the word." They arrived exactly at 2. My mom looked older than I remembered. Hair more gray than brown now. Face lined with worry. My dad had lost significant weight, looked gaunt. His expensive clothes replaced with khakis and a worn button-down. Lily, now 22, looked very different from the teenager I remembered. Her face was thinner, eyes downcast. She was missing her usual theatrical flair. When my mom saw me, her eyes filled with tears, and she rushed forward, arms out for a hug. I stepped back, putting Sophie partially between us. "Seat." Nobody spoke for what felt like minutes. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "Son, I'm not your son." I cut him off. "You made that very clear 7 years ago. Now talk. Why am I here?" My mom started crying. My dad looked broken. Lily kept staring at the table. 3 months ago, my dad said, his voice tight, Lily called a family meeting. She told us she'd lied about everything. I looked at Lily. "Look at me." Slowly, she raised her eyes, red from crying. "Why?" She took a shaky breath. "I was jealous. You were the perfect son, star athlete, smart. Everyone loved you. Mom and Dad gave you everything. I wanted them to love me more, pay attention to me. So you accused me of something that could have put me in prison, destroyed my entire life." The rage I thought I'd processed years ago came flooding back. "I didn't think it would go that far," she whispered. "I thought they'd just be mad at you, maybe ground you. But then everyone started asking questions, and I couldn't take it back. And then they just kept going. Everyone was so nice to me, giving me things, making me feel special. I didn't know how to stop. And you too." I looked at my parents. "You threw me out without even listening, without proof." My dad tried to speak. "We thought we were protecting her." She was our little girl, and I was your son. I slammed my hand on the table. The entire coffee shop went quiet. People at nearby tables pretended not to listen, but hung on every word. You want to know what happened after you kicked me out? My truck broke down. I lost my apartment. I slept in a baseball equipment shed. I got beaten up by people who heard the rumors. I almost froze to death. I stood on a bridge ready to jump because my family, the people who were supposed to love me, believed the worst without a single question. I pulled out my phone, showed them pictures. Me with a black eye and split lip from the bar fight. Me looking gaunt and hollow during my homeless period. My hospital records from the beating. I was your son. My voice cracked. Sophie squeezed my hand. Frank put his hand on my shoulder, grounding me. We're so sorry, my mom sobbed. We made a terrible mistake. We want to make it right. Make it right. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. How exactly do you plan to do that? Give me back 7 years of my life. Erase the nightmares. Undo the trauma of being homeless, of being beaten, of standing on that bridge ready to die. My mom was crying uncontrollably now. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 5 minutes. We wanted to come home, my dad said, his voice barely audible. We want our family back together. That's not going to happen. I looked at Sophie and Frank. I already have a family. People who actually stood by me. Lily finally spoke up. There's something else you should know. She explained how, after her confession, everything changed. My parents cut her off financially, sold the BMW they'd bought her for her 16th birthday, while I'd been sleeping in my truck. She had to drop out of her expensive private college and work retail while taking night classes at community college that my dad's business had tanked after some bad investments. They'd been forced to downsize from their big house to an apartment. My mom's social standing in town was destroyed when word spread about Lily's lie. We need your help, Jake, my mom admitted, finally looking ashamed. Your father's business is failing. We're about to lose the condo. Lily can't afford to stay in school. We've had to sell almost everything. There it was. They didn't want forgiveness. They wanted money. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Let me get this straight. You destroy my life. Disown me. Leave me homeless. And now that I've managed to build a successful life despite you, you want me to bail you out? We're family, my dad said weakly. No, we're not. I stood up. You made your choice 7 years ago. Now you get to live with it. Please, Lily begged, tears streaming down her face. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but Mom and Dad shouldn't suffer for my mistake. You're right. They should suffer for their own mistake. I looked at my parents. I forgive Lily. She was a kid who made a terrible choice. But you two? You were adults who should have protected both your children. Instead, you threw one away without a second thought. I put money on the table for our coffee. As we were leaving, my mom grabbed my arm. Please, don't leave it like this. What can we do? What do you want from us? I looked at her for a long moment. I want you to remember how it feels to have everything taken away, to feel helpless, to have nobody believe in you. Maybe then you'll understand what you did to me. Sophie, Frank, and I walked out. As I got to the car, Frank squeezed my shoulder. Proud of you, son. That was 2 years ago that I learned through mutual acquaintances that my parents lost their condo. My dad now works at a big box store. My mom cleans houses. Lily dropped out of school completely and moved to another state. Sometimes I think about reaching out. Sophie says forgiveness will be the final step in my healing. Not for their benefit, but for mine. Frank says it's my choice and he'll support me either way. For now, I'm focused on my own family. Sophie is pregnant with our first child. We're expanding the security firm to 3 more states. Building something real that can't be taken away. We bought a house with a view. Some mornings I have coffee on the deck and think about that meeting. The look on my mom's face when she realized I wasn't there to rescue them, that I don't feel guilty about it, that I just feel free. These days I run 3 companies and mentor 2 startups. I work with at-risk youth through a program Frank helped me start, teaching them that one person's life doesn't have to define your entire life. That I got a few emails after that meeting. Voicemails from my dad asking to talk things through. I deleted them without listening. Last I heard, my dad's still at that retail job. Entry level. The kind of job I've been working at 23 while putting myself through community college and sleeping in my C.R.M. Why mom lost most of her real estate connections. Turns out people don't want to work with someone whose family drama became public gossip. Lily apparently works at a call center somewhere in Arizona. She sent me one email about 6 months ago. I didn't open it. Maybe someday I will. But not yet. People ask me if I'll let my parents meet their grandchild. Honestly, I don't know. Will they be in the delivery room? Absolutely not. Will they ever babysit? Hell no. But maybe supervised visits eventually. If they get serious therapy. If they take full responsibility. If I'm confident they won't poison my child against me with more lies. That's a big if. Some of you reading this probably think I'm heartless. That I should forgive and forget. That family is family. But you weren't there when my dad punched me and threw me onto the lawn. You didn't sleep in that equipment shed in below zero weather. You didn't stand on that bridge in the rain, ready to jump because everyone you loved had abandoned you. That I forgave Lily because she was 15 and stupid. But my parents? They were adults who made a choice to protect one child by sacrificing another. They never questioned, never investigated, never even checked if I had an alibi for the dates Lily claimed things happened. They believed the worst about me instantly, and now they wanted to save them from the consequences of their own choices. The answer is no. Did I build a life from nothing? I found people who actually loved me unconditionally. Frank, who saw me in my absolute lowest and chose to help anyway. Sophie, who heard the worst story about my past and said, I believe you. That's family, not DNA, not shared history, but people who show up when it matters. So, am I the asshole for refusing to help my parents after they disowned me based on a lie? I don't think so, but I guess that's for you to decide.
Stay safe out there. Until next time.